So did you make your own watches or how did you get into this?
Yeah, yeah. This is the Sopwith Watch Company is up and rocking and rolling as of about 3 weeks ago.
Amazing.
I I always knew that I would. Here's the thing: even if you're living a rock star lifestyle, and man, I'm on TV and I've got this show, and we're going to the 14 hours of Daytona next week. At the end of the day, you're still working for somebody else. You're working for a car owner, you're working for a sponsor, you're working for a network, you're working for somebody else. I always felt like I needed to own something. A friend of mine once told me, he said, Stephen, you're making money with what you do with your hands. And no matter how well you do, that's still what you're doing. He said, you need to make money with what somebody else does with their hands. And
Right.
so I need to own something. And I've always been crazy about watches. And even since I was a kid, I've just loved watches. And so the last, since probably 2019 or 2020, since actually before, I left NBC, I had been secretly conspiring to launch a watch company, and found some wonderful, wonderful partners in Texas, Houston area, to help me make it happen. And we pooled our resources. And I own the name Sopwith in the United States and have since the 1990s. And that is early aviation manufacturer. They made the Sopwith Pup and the Sopwith Camel and some very famous airplanes in World War I, but they went out of business immediately after the war. They've been out of business since 1919. And so the name kind of sat out there, and a few people used it over time, but I acquired it here in the United States. And I thought, I've already got Sopwith Motorsports and Sopwith Television Productions. It's going to be Sopwith Watch Company. And so I thought, what can we do that is substantially different than every other company out there? And by the way, we're in the luxury space.
Okay.
Our watches are $5,000 to $10,000. Think Omega, Breitling, IWC, Rolex. We're in that luxury space. And we we decided that I love World War I aviation. I love aviation. It's a hobby of mine. I've never tried to pursue it or anything. I'm not a pilot, but I love it, and I have access to parts that other people don't have. And I thought, here's what we can do. I have the engine cylinders, the block, and the unrestorable pistons from serial number 55521 Gnome 9N rotary engine that was used in the spring of 1918 on the Western Front in France in an American Newport 28 fighter. The
Come
cylinders
on.
can't be restored. Yeah, seriously, yeah. And so what I decided to do is to do something that nobody else that I know of has ever done in the history of watchmaking, and that is make the entire case, and you can see that charcoal black right here, the entire case, that's the chassis of the watch, if you will, if you're not a watch guy, but take the entire case of the watch and make the case entirely from these old metals. And so
Wow.
we started calling up foundries across the United States, and nobody would touch the job. They said, we're not going to mill your steel for you so you can cast it into watch cases. And I'm like, why not? You do this all the time. And so when we started calling Shanghai and Beijing and every place on earth, and nobody would touch our job. And finally, a guy told us, he said, you know why nobody will touch your job? And I said, no, please tell me. I got to get this done. And he said, we deal in metric tons. He goes, how many pounds of steel do you have? And I said, I have 276 pounds of steel from 4 different airplanes, 2 World War II, 2 World War I. And he goes, first of all, I don't want your steel in my foundry. He said, it's priceless. They're not making any more Messerschmitt Me-109s for World War II. This is
Right.
priceless steel. And he said, I don't want it in my shop. And he said, secondly, we deal in metric tons. And he said, we go in and have a cleaning crew that cleans out 500 pounds of shards and steel splinters after every load we run and melt down. He goes, if I put your 278 pounds or whatever it is into our system, he goes, you'll never see it again. It'll be gone forever. And he goes, that's why everybody's telling you no. And so I got a hold of my friends,
Interesting.
my partners in Houston, and I said, we got a problem here. And we got together and built our own foundry in Houston. And
No way.
everything is small scale. So we can literally pour just 5 or 10 pounds of steel at a time. So that is how we melted the steel down. And cast it into watch cases. Then we went to the Swiss because nobody out Swisses the Swiss, right? I mean,
That's
it's
right.
they make watches, Swiss
Yeah.
watches, and we bought the finest GMT movement that we could possibly find for a pilot's watch. And so this is the Sopwith Aero Marquis GMT watch. It will track 2 time zones. You can go scuba diving in it. It's water resistant to 200 meters. You could take this thing to the highest mountain or across the Sahara Desert, and it will stand up to anything you can throw at it. And you're wearing a piece of history on your wrist. The watch does not commemorate an airplane. The watch is the airplane. You're wearing the airplane on your wrist, and that's a first in watchmaking. And so that's my daytime job now, and then my weekend job is still, of course, racing Friday through Sunday.
Amazing. Okay, so this begs the question, where did you find these engines? How did you get a hold of these things?
Yeah, well, I have a lifetime of contacts in World War I and World War II aviation, and a friend of mine, a friend of mine named Fred Murrin, he lives in Greenville, Pennsylvania. He has Murrin Antique Aero, and a quick story of background about him that will help answer this question. Do you know the film director Peter Jackson,
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings?
Yeah.
Okay, he lives in what, New Zealand, I think? Well, Peter Jackson's grandfather was in World War I, and Peter Jackson, his personal hobby is to collect everything World War I. And since he's a multi-bajillionaire, he can collect a lot of good stuff. And so he has, restorations and replicas made of World War I aircraft with authentic engines. And Fred Murrin of Murrin Antique Aero in Pennsylvania actually was in New Zealand for several years working as Peter Jackson's mechanic to keep his fleet of World War I aircraft skyworthy. And so
Wow.
uh, Fred calls me. Actually, he didn't call me up. We were having dinner together at the Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio, a few years ago. Probably, it's been several years, 2018, 2019, something like that. And so we're sitting down, we're having dinner together at the museum, and we're talking about airplanes. And he says, by the way, he said, I've got a Gnome engine, and there's maybe 20 or 30 of these engines left in the world. And he said, we got the serial number still on it. And he goes, I just can't salvage it. He said, we found it out in Colorado. It was in some dude's attic out in Colorado. And it traced all the way back to Pennsylvania again in 1924. And it was shipped over in early 1919 from the Western Front, where it was used in a fighter. So there's a big long history behind it. And he goes, I've got these cylinders. And he said, do you have any idea what mice do to steel? He said, it's unusable. He said, they just destroy it. And by the time you could unseize the pistons and that kind of thing, it's just not, I can't make it salvageable again to use as a museum piece or to make it airworthy. And he said, he goes, but there's none of these engines left. I can't
Yeah.
I can't bear the thought of throwing it away. And I said, don't throw it away. And he goes, what are you going to do
Yeah.
with it? I said, I don't know, but don't throw it away. And so he said, all right. He goes, well, let's work something out. And so I went up to see Fred at his shop, and I ended up acquiring 3 cylinders with the pistons still frozen inside them, plus the original block of engine serial number 55521 that had its previous life at a place in France called the Nome and Larone factory on the north side of Paris, where they built those engines, sold them to the United States Air Service. And it's one of those things that is so obscure that if you don't know the right people, you will never find it.